What to do, y'all? This is Chris Evans, and this is Talking Data and More. And today, I have a very special guest joining me on Talking Data and More. And this individual has helped, led, and made companies data-driven with their business intelligence and data visualization data strategies. So I want you all to welcome Martin Rivera. Martin?
Hey, Chris, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, thank you so much for joining. For the folks that don't know who Martin is, can you give a brief introduction on what I would like to call your data superpowers?
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on. Overall, I've been working with business intelligence and analytics tools for close to 20 years now, since about 2002, in really a bunch of different capacities from, business analysis type roles, of course, developer, architect, project lead, project leadership, sales sort of support, right? So really have kind of run the gamut in terms of understanding the end-to-end, sort of spectrum of business intelligence and analytic solutions. And then, of course, over the last, I want to say 5, 6, 7 years, as these tools have become a lot more visual, have been focusing heavily on the visualization and design piece, with various tools. So.
That's awesome, Martin. And I got to ask you before we get into this, and just like as you articulate, your data superpowers, how you helped organizations, really become data driven as you played those multiple different roles, right? Sure. I got to ask you first before we get into it, as you could tell from the background, who's your favorite comic book character and why? I got to ask, right?
Well, let me see how I can explain this. I'll give you a quick little anecdote because I've had this conversation with many people in a very serious context, right? So we can, of course, everyone agrees that firefighters are heroes, are real life heroes, right? Now, but think about if a firefighter was fireproof, if they were immune to fire, would running into a burning building still be as heroic if the fire is not going to burn you? So with that in mind, I think there's only one actual superhero, and that, of course, is the mighty Batman, who has no superpowers, but is just an awesome dude.
That's right. I agree. Batman. He's in my top 5. I love Batman. I love that. And Martin, I think that's awesome too, right? Because, again, Batman's in my top 5. He is truly that superhero. He's got that utility belt. Basically, that utility belt has something for anything and everything. And being, involved and being in the industry for so long, helping customers be data-driven, you have something for all your customers, right? You have something to make the customers data-driven. So I have to ask you, based on your multiple years of experience helping organizations understand the importance of business intelligence, data visualization, can you talk about the why business intelligence, data visualization is important and the value it brings to organizations,
Yeah, of course. One of the things I've done in the past in terms of sort of training and introducing, whether it be clients or, personnel, colleagues of mine to the data visualization concepts is this thing that I like to call the 5 W's of data visualization. So kind of what is it? Who is it for? Where do you do it? When do you do it? And then, of course, the last piece being why, right? Why do we care about visualizing data, right? If we have the data available, if we have the data, correct, why does it matter? And don't get me wrong, as we know, it's all about the data. If the data is incorrect, then, everything else going forward doesn't sort of add up to the data not being appropriate. But the way that, we can, add value and really kind of capstone a business intelligence and analytics project is with data visualization. So if we take a simple example, right, and without, of course, going into the context too much, but look at 2 different news networks, 2 different news channels, you can look at the same story and get 2 very different conclusions from, really an analysis or an anecdote of the same event. You get a very different impression of what intent was, in some cases of, even what what the players were, what was the effect, and so on and so forth. And so, if we transfer that to kind of a data-driven situation, we have the opportunity, and dare I say, even the power to shape the message that we're telling with that data through visualization. So for me, I always ensure that, I communicate the importance to organizations of what, not only, what you're doing here, but why are we doing it, right? Or, is this a solution that's intended to, affect compliance processes? Is it, a revenue generating solution? Is it a cost cutting solution? Whatever that may be, right? Performance management, financial forecasting, whatever that why may be, and ensure that as we build different parts of that solution, we never lose sight of that.
That's spot on. And I love how you talk about, definitely the why, but shaping that data, right, to answer some of those questions. I love the analogy with the two different news stories, right? The way you're painting that data is very important. So no, that's definitely spot on. And that's the value I think that's giving the organization, helping them answer the why to your five different points you bring up, right?
Exactly.
Okay. No. And as you discussed and articulated the value, and I think to your point, it's correct, right? The whole BI and data visualization is important because nobody really likes to look at a bunch of data. With that, you're able to paint that true picture on what's the value, why, right? Whether companies sales are trending low or are they trending higher, and why are they trending higher, right? Can you talk about, what are some of the biggest challenges for organizations that are trying to incorporate, business intelligence, the data visualization nowadays?
Sure. I mean, I think nowadays is a key word in that question, because the way that tools are evolving and have evolved really over the last several years. If we look at kind of the old school BI, where we kind of had a much more structured, one single EDW perhaps, and kind of a more traditional solution structure. Now, with all of the different ways and all of the different types of data, it's a little bit more fluid, right? So when we talk about, obviously social media data, unstructured data, Internet of Things, all of those different types of data. And so, for me, I think a challenge that I see organizations having is, how do you then still manage all of those different data sources and still, sort of manage to what we like to call the single version of the truth, right? Which is kind of a underlying term that we use in analytic solutions. But it's challenging because, of course, you want to, you have to use that data, right? I mean, it's very important to, your decision making, but how you sort of structure and relate that data to have one cohesive, sort of story being told in one cohesive message, represented by that data, I think can be very challenging. So, in terms of, guiding organizations through that, I think, it's important to look at sort of the maturity scale, right? So kind of how ready are they at a more of a beginner type, type state in terms of, adopting and implementing BI solutions, or are they, much more advanced and kind of have the structures and the processes necessary to support a lot more complex integration and so on. So, so I mean, it's really kind of, on a case-by-case basis, how you would address those solutions. But for me, that concept is very critical right now, is how do you sort of wrangle all the different potential, places and formats that data can come in and from.
That's a good point. And, based on your experience, because you worked with so many different types of customers in different industries, what would you say are more customers still not as mature, immature, or is it 50-50? Where do you see it went based on, your experience in most organizations?
I think in terms of what we call kind of the modern data architecture, right? When we talk about, cloud-based solutions and things like that, of course, a lot of organizations I think are still on the lower end of that maturity scale, because I think that those are platforms and tools and even concepts that are even now still evolving very rapidly, right? So it's sort of difficult a lot of times to change the mindset. And then you talk about, for example, there's still concerns about certain organization types putting their data out on the cloud for security reasons and things like that. So I do think that there's a cautious optimism with a lot of organizations in terms of adopting kind of these modern platforms and architectures. But really, a lot of it still comes down to mindset, to doing things the way that they're used to being done, to looking at data in the same ways that it's been looked at. And so a lot of it is really just kind of that realization of value. So, conveying to organizations or to clients, hey, this is why, this is what we're going to gain by adopting, these new platforms and methods and processes. And obviously, having that sponsorship and having that appropriate sort of level of commitment, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and that's awesome. To your point, that commitment, organizations have to make that commitment, especially if they're trying to be data driven. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, also one of the things too, I gotta ask you before we wrap up is, what are the major trends that, you foresee that organizations will need to either adapt or quickly, get on board per se, right, within BI and the whole data visualization set? I mean, what do you see personally?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's already, underway, kind of happening, which we just touched on, is the fact that data can come in so many different shapes and forms. And you add to that then sort of the emphasis on self-service, right? So long gone are the days where, you as a business analyst or whomever, right, as a recipient would, submit a request to IT. Here's what I'd want a report to look like, or a dashboard, and, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the way that tools are designed, obviously it's much more of a, here's sort of these different packages of data or these different models, and you go to town and create your own outputs, your own reports, your own dashboards, and so on and so forth. Now that's great, and it really takes a lot of of the overhead out of the overarching process. But as to do a quick little superhero quote, right, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So what do we have?
I love it.
And then we have seriously, then we have potentially a Wild West in terms of what people are producing. So that's when I come back to really just the principles of having procedures and policies and guidelines around data visualization, regardless. And this is completely technology or tool agnostic. This is really just something as simple as, what are some design principles, right? If you decide that, hey, in this particular, visualization, I'm going to highlight, products that are performing badly as red, and products that are sort of in between, in danger of performing badly as orange, and everything else is blue. And then I decide, well, I don't necessarily want to ring the alarm that much, so I'm going to highlight products that are performing badly as orange. So now all of a sudden, those two outputs get in front of a decision maker, and it's, confusing. It can potentially lead to, incorrect conclusions. But something as simple as that, right, as not having those standards and those, or something as simple as, you might consider anything below, 15% of sales for a particular product to be bad. I might say, maybe it's 20, right? So those simple things, standards and sort of processes, and of course that goes alongside with governance and security and procedure around that. But I think you've covered that in other videos, and that's kind of a separate topic. But even as it relates to just visualization and design and those sorts of things in general, I think that it's important to think about that, because once you get into a situation where everyone can start producing content, if you don't get your arms around that, it can have a lot worse consequences than you might realize. So. Yeah,
and Martin, I love the Spider-Man quote you bring up. That's awesome. And to your point, you don't want it to be the Wild West, right? But self-service is coming. Yep, we see it now. But making sure that there is no confusion, that The data that you are putting together, you're projecting, you're visualizing is spot on. Is it the same as what you and I may think? I totally agree with you, and I do foresee that those are the big major trends. And those are some of the big gotchas we have to watch out. So love those insights, Martin. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. That sounds good.
Well, Martin, I want to thank you for taking the time and joining me on Talking Data and More. Really appreciate, having you on, bringing those insights and showcasing and telling, other organizations the value of business intelligence and data visualization. So glad that you were able to join me today.
Oh, absolutely, Chris. My pleasure, man. I love talking about this stuff in a fun and sort of, simple format like this. I really appreciate you having me on, and I really enjoy these videos. So definitely keep them coming, man.
Oh, will do. Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank everybody for taking the time and checking out Talking Data and More. Hope to see you all in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.